So this was the more interesting facts that I found out. It's called the white owl, the silver owl. Feel free to write this down. Demon owl, ghost owl, death owl, night owl, rat owl, church owl. Church owl. I don't know how that came about. Maybe there was a few barn owls in a church, I guess. Cave owl. That's more reasonable because they do sometimes be stay in caves. Stone owl, probably because they're very still when they hunt or scan their surroundings. Monkey-faced owl. They're also called the hobgoblin or the hobby owl, the dobby owl, white-breasted owl, golden owl, screech owl, straw owl, barnyard owl, and delicate. Hello everyone, good morning. I hope you're doing well today and I hope your day is going great. If not, that is totally fine. Welcome to the Early Bird Weekly Podcast. I'm Ritiksha Satish Kumar, and in today's episode, we are going to be learning about the barn owl. So, the barn owl I always thought was a very creepy bird. I always think owls are creepy, except a few species, kind of like the owl in Harry Potter. I think that one's cute. But especially barn owl, it just seems very creepy to me, especially its heart-shaped face. So that's why I wanted to learn more about it. So I, researched a lot about this barn owl, and I found some very unexpected facts about these. It creeped me out and also made me wonder, if these owls actually do possess like any spirit, like demonic spirit or whatever. I know it's crazy, but according to folklore and history, it will make you wonder that, whether these barn owls are actually demonic. So in this episode, I'm mostly going to be focusing on some common facts about the barn owl, but also adding some very unexpected and interesting or unheard of facts as well. So I hope you really enjoy it. But before we go into the episode, we are going to kind of ground ourselves and do some breathing exercises to relax and focus. So if you're ready, breathe in really slow and breathe out. Try to let go of any thoughts that are disturbing you, any thoughts that are restricting you from being happy. Just let it go when you breathe out. Breathe in and slowly let go. Breathe in and let go. Open your eyes if you're closing them and just relax. Thank you so much for doing that with me. I hope you're relaxed and I hope you feel grounded. So now we're ready to go into the episode about the barn owl. So the barn owl's scientific name is Tyto alba. So Tyto comes from its family name Titanidae, and alba means white in Latin. Some of the species in Titanidae, actually all of the species are owls, and sometimes it is hard to differentiate from the bay owl and the barn owl, which are in the same family. I think they're in the same family, I'm not sure. But the bay owl has a angular heart face, whereas the barn owl has a very flat heart-shaped face. So there are in total 25 barn owl species that are currently alive or existing. And some of the very interesting facts about this barn owl is that they are found in every single continent except Antarctica. And this is very, very unique because not all animals are found in every continent, especially birds, because some are more migratory. Most birds are usually only found in one or two continents, such as the Pacific robin that we saw. It's only found in Australia and in maybe some other islands. But this barn owl is solitary, which is in itself very creepy because not, most birds are not solitary. At least they at least hunt in flocks or migrate in flocks, but the barn owl does not do that. It spends all of its life in solitude. So a solitary bird being in every single continent is I find it very creepy. So they're also considered as harbingers of misfortune. So this is a very new thing that I learned. Harbingers of misfortune are like a collection of animals that are kind of steeped in history to be kind of like known to bring misfortune or like kind of stereotyped as bad luck. So I would not question that because the barn owl does look very creepy and it does give out creepy vibes, but I do find it kind of hard to believe that any animal or bird can bring true misfortune. Anyways, let's move on to some hunting facts. So these barn owls are nocturnal, like we would have imagined. One of the main things that allow them to hunt in complete darkness is their attuned and highly sensitive ears. So their ears are actually very tiny, and their heart-shaped face kind of acts like a satellite that sends sound right back or right towards their ears. So this is what makes them very, very sensitive to every single sound that they hear. So this is very, useful for hunting prey, especially terrestrial prey, because terrestrial prey are hard to hunt, especially for a bird. They need to be very silent and very, very attentive to be able to, figure out where their prey is, because most of the time they eat rodents and mice and all that, and they're usually sometimes they're burrows which are underground. So to kind of make out where their burrows are or where they usually live, they definitely need a high sense of hearing. So especially in the complete darkness, that is very, very important. And also coupled with their silent flight, this becomes, this kind of produces a skilled hunter. So if someone asked me to name this owl, the barn owl, I would say Midnight Hunter, because in spite of being, considered as the harbinger of misfortune and a lot of other things, it has a lot of names as well, which are kind of steeped in history, kind of like demonic owl, a demogorgon owl. We'll get into all of those facts later. I don't want to get off track, but in spite of being known as such a bad influence, this barn owl is very, very, very skilled in hunting. So some of the very unique appearance of the barn owl is the long lower positioned bill. So its beak is kind of positioned over here, like it has kind of like a nose structure, and then its beak is very tiny. It's kind of like over there, and it kind of looks like a giant nose, and then it has small eyes compared to its nose, and its eyes are usually kind of blackish, like brown color, and it looks like they're kind of staring into your soul. That's how I would describe it, and that makes them very creepy to look at. And also they can turn their heads 270 degrees in either direction, and that just creeps everything out of me, because I feel like coupled with their long nose and unusually small eyes and their ability to turn their head, they do look like kind of a demon owl, to be honest. So let's take a break from more creepy facts, but let's get into some appearance. So let's learn about the appearance of the barn owl. I'm sure most of you would have seen a barn owl at least once in your life, considering that they're cosmopolitan, if you still remember what it means. So the appearance is, it's a medium-sized pale bird with long wings and a short, squarish tail. So it has a wingspan of 68 to 105 centimeters, which is very long, and owls are usually known to have a long wingspan. Its head and upper body are pale brown or kind of like in some shade of gray. And they have fine black and white speckles except on the rectrices. So the rectrices are the main wing and tail feathers. So only those are light brown with darker bands, whereas all of the other, fur or whatever you call it is speckled with black and white. So their heart-shaped face is usually white, but in some species it's brown. I've only seen a white heart-shaped face barn owl. Its iris, as I told you, is always kind of blackish brown and lifeless. Some of the appearances of birds are more harder to explain, but I think you guys have seen a barn owl, so I don't really need to explain too much. So, getting into some geography and hunting, these birds, as you know, are found everywhere except Antarctica and colder climates and desert areas. They are birds of open country, which means they're mostly found in open areas such as grasslands, savannas, anywhere with not a lot of trees. But it doesn't mean that they're not found near trees or woodlands. They are, just it depends on which place they live. They hunt along the edges of woods or rough grass strips adjoining the pasture. And according to one of the videos I watched, the nesting and roosting behaviors of the barn owl is very unique. So because they choose holes in the trees, fissures in the cliffs, and disused buildings, chimneys, hay sheds, barns, silos, etc. So like all of these are very unusual places to nest. Most of the birds only nest like in tree cavities or on top of branches, some in tree stumps, but the barn owl, the reason it's called a barn owl is because it is everywhere. In your barn, in your shed, in buildings, chimneys, and everywhere. So that is the geography and hunting of the barn owl. So that's basically where they live. Now let's get into their behaviors. So as you know, barn owls hunt at night in complete darkness, and they rely on acute hearing, flying slowly, and flying silently. So the technique that they use to hunt is that they fly slowly, quartering the ground, and hovering over spots that might contain prey. So they also use, this is very interesting, they use fence posts to scan surroundings. So that's why you sometimes see barn owls in fences. That means, they're kind of scanning their grounds. So they kind of just adapt everywhere. And I think that's why they're found everywhere, because they're such good adapters. They use everything that they have and they make a living out of it. So, as we know, barn owls are carnivores. They don't like plants. They eat bats, birds, and mostly terrestrial prey, which means land prey. So, as for behaviors of males and females, they roost separately. Roost basically means live or like nest. So they roost separately because they're solitary outside of the breeding season. So when the breeding season comes, they do come together to lay eggs and all that. We'll get into that very soon. But outside of the breeding season, they are very, very solitary birds. So Another very interesting fact that I learned, and I think one of the very first facts, is that barn owls do not hoot. They do not, hoot like other owls. We usually associate owls with their hooting at night, but instead, these barn owls utter an eerie screech, like they just scream. And also, it's painful to human hearing at close range, so I would never want to hear a barn owl scream. If I do, then good luck to my ears. So they do not hoot, they utter an eerie screech. And we don't know why they do this. It's unique. It's very unique, and I think they would have some reason to do this. Maybe in their communication, screaming at the top of their lungs is like saying hello, maybe. So anyways, another very interesting fact is that a group of barn owls, there's not really groups of barn owls, but, maybe pairs of barn owls in the breeding season, are called parliament or spare. So, like how animals and birds kind of have group names or collective nouns, kind of like a pack of wolves or a pride of lions. These barn owls are called a parliament. So, like, imagine saying a parliament of owls or a stare of owls. I mean, stare kind of makes sense because they kind of stare at you, and maybe that's how the name kind of came about. But parliament is, I don't know who thought of that, parliament. Anyways, let's not dwell on that. Let's move on. Some of the mating habits of the barn owls are interesting, but kind of, not very unusual. They're pretty interesting. So barn owls are monogamous, which means they live with one partner for all of their life. But I can't really say that because they don't really roost together. They only live together during a breeding season. So the male actually has some interesting, like, what do you say? Courtship behaviors, just like any other bird. So the male short circuits to establish the home range. I don't know what short circuiting is. I'm thinking it's like flying in circles. I don't know. But anyways, in later stages of courtship, the male emerges at dusk. It climbs high into the sky and swoops back to the vicinity of the female at full speed. So I will repeat that because it was kind of hard for me to understand as well. So in later stages of courtship, the barn owl male emerges at dusk, climbs high into the sky, swoops back to the vicinity of the female at full speed. I don't know why they do this, but it's very interesting. The female's attracted to barn owls that can touch the sky. The expectations are certainly very high. Anyways, meanwhile, the female kind of sits and preens, returning to a nest a minute or two before the male arrives with food. So this we have seen in other owls as well. I think it was the snowy owl, where the male kind of brings food for the female as a gift, or kind of trying to please her. So it's interesting here, in this case, the female knows when the male is gonna come, and she kind of comes back to the nest before the male comes, And I feel like barn owls, one of the mysterious facts is the one that I just told you about, like flying high into the sky. I know we used to sing like a song about an owl flying really high into the sky, probably in my choir class, and I always thought it was just like, I didn't really take that as a fact. I didn't know that owls actually did that, but it turns out they do, and I don't know the reason for it at all. So barn owls, as for nesting, barn owls don't use nesting material, as they are cavity nesters. They kind of nest in cavities, like in tree cavities, barns, sheds, silos, etc. And the female incubates her eggs with her regurgitated pellets. So regurgitated pellets are something that every bird, has. They kind of eat whatever they have to eat, I mean their prey or like their food, and then they regurgitate their pellets, which are like the remaining food that cannot be digested. And scientists kind of use these pellets to figure out their diet. In this case, the female uses her pellets to, incubate her nest, which is very self-sustainable. I mean, like, you don't have to go out, get twigs, branches, leaves, and everything. You just regurgitate pellets, I guess. So they're very furry as well. I don't know how they're furry, but they keep the chicks very warm. And as for the owlets, the owl chicks or owlets, they're covered with grayish-white down. So a down means, the fur of the bird. So starting off, they're very grayish-white, and then they develop rapidly. So by 3 weeks, the owlets stand, making snoring noises with their wings raised and tail stumps waggling. So they kind of start making sounds. They raise their wings and like move their tails and everything, which I guess is very cute. I did see a video of someone kind of attaching a camera inside an owl nest or an owl cavity, and it was really, really fun to see how the owl raised the chick and how the chicks grew up and everything. I don't know where the video is right now. I probably saw it like 2 years ago, but you can definitely search that up, and it's very interesting to watch them. So by the 6th week, they're big as adults. So, in 6 weeks, they're already grown up, and by the 9th week, they're fully fledged, and they leave the nest themselves. So fully fledged means they kind of, get all of their feathers grown out, and they're all ready to fly, and they kind of, leave their nest and start training with their mom. So the female, their mom, trains them to catch prey. And this is very important because, they have to be self-sustainable because they're going to be solitary birds. I was researching about the owlets. I did find some very cute pictures of them, which I thought were very interesting, so I attached them. So now moving on to some population threats of the barn owl. Every bird, every animal has some kind of population threat, especially in this era. So one of the very unique population threats is the organochlorine poisoning from agriculture. So I think it's some kind of pest that farmers use to kind of kill insects or anything, and these barn owls are getting affected by it because sometimes the rodents eat this poison, that's what I'm assuming, and then the barn owls eat the rodents and get poisoned. So another population threat is road mortality. Just because they're found everywhere, it's very, very easy for them to be killed by a car. And also we learned that these barn owls are not very adapted to the cold climate. I mean, not for very harsh cold climates, at least. And, sometimes if they do experience harsh winters, especially due to climate change, it might be very negative on their population. So there's a lot of barn owls, but I just don't know how to read these numbers. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really, really bad at math. The ecological niche of this barn owl is that they keep prey numbers in check, and they are very beneficial for farmers because they kind of think that barn owls are better than poisoning the rodents because they're so good at keeping the rodents off. It's kind of like cats, but more efficient. And also ecological niche means the use or the role that the animal or the bird plays in the environment or in ecology. So now let's get into the very interesting facts about the barn owl. So the scientific name of the barn owl literally means white owl. So as we know, Tyto alba means white owl. The barn owl is known by many common names that refer to its appearance, call, habitat, or its eerie silent flight. So this was the more interesting facts that I found out. It's called the white owl, the silver owl. Feel free to write this down. Demon owl, ghost owl, death owl, night owl, rat owl, church owl. I don't know how that came about. Maybe there was a few barn owls in a church, I guess. Cave owl, that's more reasonable because they do sometimes keep, like, stay in caves. Stone owl, probably because they're very still when they hunt or scan their surroundings. Monkey-faced owl, they're also called the hobgoblin or the hobby owl, the dobby owl, white-breasted owl, golden owl, screech owl, straw owl, barnyard owl, and delicate owl. Okay, the last one kind of does not make sense, but sometimes when you look at their feathers, they kind of look delicate. Anyways, moving on to the next fact, barn owls have acute hearing, with ears placed asymmetrically, and this improves their detection of sound position and distance. The bird, it does not require sight to hunt because they have such a good hearing. Hunting nocturnal or crepuscular, these proficient hunters can target their prey and dive to the ground, penetrating their talons through snow, grass, or brush to seize small creatures with deadly accuracy. So crepuscular is kind of like between like kind of in the dusk time range. So whenever the sun kind of starts setting, that's when this term is used, crepuscular. And nocturnal is hunting at night. So they fly silently, detect their prey, and then hover over the spots that they detected and kind of like pierce their talons in and take out the poor prey. Anyways, it says they do this with deadly accuracy. Yeah, that scares me. Moving on to the next fact, barn owls may eat one or more bowls or their equivalent per night, equivalent to about 23% of the bird's body weight. So vole is a kind of rodent, and I'm assuming it's pretty big because they eat 23% of their body weight in one night, every night. Excess food, if they have excess food, they often cache it at roosting sites, and when food is scarce, they kind of, use that. So caching is storing food, and as we know, barn owls are kind of territorial, at least the males are, territorial. They like to keep their own roosting sites, or like their nesting sites. And if they have excess food, they just cache it, which is very proactive, I guess. So traditionally, populations in many places considered barn owls to be birds of evil omen, and this has led to various common names of these birds, such as demon owl, death owl, ghost owl, or lich owl. I don't know what the last one is, but all of these names are very creepy, and I would think that, it definitely has something to do with history and folklore. One of such beliefs was due to barn owls don't hoot, but emit raspy screeches and hissing noises. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, if barn owls are threatened or cornered, they do emit hissing noises, and it's more creepy than the screech. And their white face and underbelly feathers, visible as they fly overhead, make them look ghostly. So these are some of the reasons why they have these names. For example, in South Africa, barn owls are often persecuted. That's not good. And associated with witchcraft. I mean, I know barn owls are creepy, but it's definitely not a good reason to persecute anything. Nothing is a good reason to persecute animals. In some South African cultures, these owls are used in muthi, or traditional medicine, and it's spelled M-U-T-H-I, and it's believed to give special powers when consumed. That is very weird, but I guess people have their own cultures. So that's basically it. That brings us to the end of this early bird episode. This was especially very, very fun for me to research and get all the information. I started the research at 5 this morning. It was really dark and it was really creepy, but I got through it and I got some very interesting facts. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the barn owl or the Tyto alba. And don't forget to tune into my episode next week when we'll be chatting about another cool bird. And don't forget to follow this podcast on social media. If you would like to message me on Instagram, The username is early_bird_weekly_podcast. Or if you'd like to send me an email about suggestions or questions or to give feedback, you can send it to earlybirdweeklypodcast@gmail.com. I'm open to any suggestions for future episodes as well. I do sometimes kind of run out of ideas, but if you like this episode, you can share it to your family, your friends, so they can get creeped out, just like you did. And that is always, very helpful for the channel as well. Or just feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify, or just keep listening. So, thank you again for listening and being here. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.